Welcome to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast, Achieving Peace Through Compassion. This podcast is a recording of the Dharma Talks given during our Sunday service.
Today, the topic of my talk is love and compassion. And, a long time ago, I used to think these open heart teachings, I used to not really be interested in those, because I used to think, man, I'm here to stop worrying so much, right? I'm here to train my mind. I'm not here to open my heart. I used to think, I don't even like other people that much, so why do I want to open my heart? But that's not how I think anymore. Now I think an open heart can be almost the whole thing. Maybe it can be the whole thing. So I'm going to take a moment, because that word love, that's a confusing and complicated word, I think, because I can say I love my wife, I love the Rime Center, and I love ice cream, right? And that's the same word, but that's not the same feeling, right? So in this context, when we say love, we're talking about, I want good things to happen to you. That's what we're talking about. So, and it can be self-directed too. I want good things to happen to myself. Sometimes we don't want good things to happen to us. So in this context, that's what love means, and that is a translation of the word metta. And compassion, on the other hand, is similar but not the same. It's I want bad things to not happen to you, right? And it's also I want bad things to not happen to myself, right? I want less suffering in the world. That's what compassion's about. And I've read something once where somebody wrote that here in the United States, we're very good at being heroes and we're less good at being helpers. And what I mean by that is this. If a bridge collapses and people are drowning in the water, you will find lots of people who will jump in and try to help them, right? But at the same time, when people are asking, should we give more resources to make sure bridges don't collapse? Right? It's a little bit harder. And people are like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't know if we should dedicate resources to that, right? So we need heroes and helpers. But we want to be heroes because, look at all this attention I can get if I rescue people, right? So that's sort of what I think about when I think about the difference between love and compassion. But I'm going to tell you guys a joke now, and forgive me. But what I'm doing is I'm building a spectrum. The spectrum is at the one end, incredibly great at kindness, love, and compassion, and the other end is not so great at it. So the joke is going to be to illustrate not so great at it, okay? So the joke is this. There's two guys in the woods, and I guess they're camping or something. I don't know what they're doing, but they see a bear approaching them. A black bear is approaching them in the distance, and it's far enough away that they have time to decide what to do. And evidently, these guys have incredible powers of observation because they can tell that bear's hungry and it's going to come eat them. Okay? So the first guy, he's like, "Hey, man, we got to fight this bear because, you know what they say: if it's brown, lay down; if it's black, fight back." You didn't think you were learning how to deal with bears today, but if it's brown, lay down; if it's black, fight back; if it's white, good night. That is, if it's a polar bear, you're not gonna get away. But so he says, if we strengthen numbers, if we try to fight this bear, it's going to leave. It doesn't want to fight. And the second guy, he says, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not fighting a bear. I'm going to run. And so the first guy's like, you're not going to outrun a bear, man. You can't get away. It's going to get you. And the second guy says, I don't have to outrun a bear. I don't have to outrun a bear. I have to outrun you. And so he takes off running, right? So that is, and of course, that's not a total deficit of compassion. He's saying something rude to his friend before he leaves him to get killed by a bear, right? That's mean. But it would be worse if he tripped him or something, right? But that is one end of the spectrum, right? But I want to tell you about the other end now. There's a story that the Buddha told. There's a collection of stories called Jataka tales. And they're stories the Buddha told. The Buddha would say, hey, this is one of my past lives. This happened, and then this happened. And the point of these stories is to teach you a lesson, though. So I think of them as sort of like Well, I sort of think of them as like fairy tales, except these are enjoyed by kids and adults, and I don't know that we as adults enjoy fairy tales anymore. So I want to say they're more like Pixar movies, because I really like Up, right? So in this particular story that the Buddha told, he said, in this past life, I was walking through a forest. So a forest again, right? I was walking through a forest, and I saw a mother tiger with some babies. And like the guys in the joke, the Buddha, or the person in the story, he has incredible observations, so he can tell this mother tiger is starving and going to die. And she has given all the food she could find to her babies. So she's going to die. And so he does something that I'm not going to do. He feeds himself to this mother tiger so that she lives. Okay, can we imagine that even, right? I think like maybe you'd sacrifice your life to save your kids or your friends or the people you love, but not an animal, certainly, right? So that I think that's one end of the other end of the spectrum. That is just seems like unlimited compassion, really. He's going to feed himself to a tiger so the tiger doesn't die. Who does that, right? So we're somewhere in between these two. I like to hope that we're a little bit closer to the Buddha, who's willing to sacrifice his life to save an animal, and maybe a little bit further away from the guy who is saying something awful to his friend before he runs from a bear, right? So that's the spectrum, and I want to be closer to this end. So I'm going to tell you another story now, though, and I'm sorry for that. But this is the Buddha's words on loving kindness, the Metta Sutta. And I think I've told this story at the Rime Center before, but it's my favorite, so I really like it. So the Buddha's discourse on loving kindness, which is where the teachings on metta, maybe they all have their origin there. It's from a collection of texts called the Sutta Nipata, and you don't have to know that, but I want you to know that this is the fifth in the collections of Buddhist texts, and chronologically. So there are thousands of Buddhist teachings. So I'm just trying to put that in context of this is very early. This is very early in the teachings, okay? And it is what the Buddha said about how we can be more ethical and more loving. But I'm fascinated by the backstory to why the Buddha told this. So I'm going to share that with you now. And then I guess I'll read it to you too. But the story is this. The Buddha would travel around with monks and other people that wanted to learn from him. And people would go to him and they would just say, hey, what should we do? And he would just tell them what to do. So this group of monks, they went to the Buddha one day and they said, hey, what should we do? And he said, go sit and meditate in the woods over there. So the monks were like, all right, we'll go sit and meditate in there. So these monks are staying in the woods and it gets dark. And if you've been camping a lot, you know, sometimes when you're camping, like you start to hear sounds that are weird and you don't really know what it is. And maybe you could even get spooked, right? That'll happen if you camp enough late at night. And that's what happened to these monks, is they started to hear noises that sort of freaked them out a little. So they got this idea in their heads that the woods were haunted and these were ghosts. And that the ghosts maybe would hurt them. So, and you know, a lot of people believe in ghosts now, but like back then, it would be rare to not believe in ghosts in that time and place, I think. So these monks are freaked out by the ghosts and they go to the Buddha and they say, hey, there's ghosts in the woods. We cannot meditate there. We don't want to go back there. Okay? So the Buddha, he paused for a second and then he gave them this teaching, the Buddha's discourse on loving kindness. He gave them this teaching and he had them memorize it. And he said, okay, just recite this when you're in the woods and do this loving kindness practice, a meditation style not unlike the sun in your heart that we did today. And so he advised them to go to the woods and do that. And they took the Buddha's instructions very seriously. So they went and they recited this text and they did these meditations. And then what happened was nothing. There were no scary sounds. Ghosts did not come hurt them. Nothing happened. Now, they were probably confused for a second when the Buddha shared this with them, like, you're going to give us these teachings on kindness to deal with ghosts? That makes no sense. But they believed in the Buddha, so they tried it, and it worked. And there's some different interpretations of this story, and I'm going to share with you maybe the one that's not my favorite, and then I'll share with you the one that I get a lot of meaning out of. So the interpretation that's not my favorite is that these monks did this practice, recited this, and like maybe the ghosts that were there were either inspired by all the love, or they were scared off by the love, or it made like a kind of circle of protection that protected them. I don't like any of that, though. The interpretation that I like is this. The ghosts weren't real. So these monks were suffering in their minds with a problem that they were making up. Okay? Anybody else make up your own problems and suffer? I do. So when the Buddha gave them this teaching, their minds got so busy with thinking about love and compassion and ethics and being a good person and just warming their heart. They were so busy being open-hearted that they didn't have the time or the mental energy to worry about things that weren't happening. They didn't have the time to be scared of ghosts. And, that can relate to us. If I'm too busy loving people, then I don't have time to judge them. I don't have time to gossip about them, right? I'm just wanting good things for them. So I'm not sitting there thinking, why not me when somebody else succeeds, right? I'm too busy spreading love. Hopefully, I want to. Anyway, so that is what worked for these monks in the woods, because they were afraid of something that wasn't there. They were afraid of something that wasn't there. And it may not be ghosts, but I think we all have things like that. We are all chasing ghosts or running from ghosts sometimes. And it doesn't serve us. But what if we can just open our hearts instead and just spend so much time thinking about how can I make this world a better place, that we don't get caught up in the gossip and the nonsense that we carry around and the worry about things we don't need to worry about. So I'm going to go ahead and read to you the Metta Sutta. And again, this is just like how to be a kind and loving person. I really like it. So this is the Metta Sutta, the Buddha's words on loving kindness. What should be done by one who's skilled in wholesomeness to gain the state of peacefulness is this. One must be able, upright, straight and not proud, easy to speak to, mild and well content, easily satisfied and not caught up in too much bustle, and frugal in one's ways. With senses calmed, intelligent, not bold, not being covetous when with other folk, abstaining from the ways the wise ones blame, and this the thought one should always hold. This is my favorite part. May beings all live happily and safe, and may their hearts rejoice within themselves. Whatever there may be with breath of life, whether they be frail or very strong without exception, be they long or short or middle-sized, or be they big or small or thick, or visible or invisible, or whether they dwell far or they dwell near. Those that are here, those seeking to exist, may beings all rejoice within themselves. Let no one bring about another's ruin, and not despise in any way or place. Let them not wish each other any ill from provocation or from enmity. Just as a mother at the risk of life loves and protects her child, her only child, so one should cultivate this boundless heart to all that live in the whole universe, extending from a consciousness sublime, upwards and downwards and across the world, untroubled, free from hate and enmity. And while one stands and while one walks and sits, or one lies down, still free from drowsiness, one should be intent on this mindfulness. This is the divine abiding. Here they say, But when one lives quite free from any view, is virtuous, with perfect insight won, and greed for sensual desires expelled, one surely comes no more to any womb. So that's the message. If we can really cultivate virtue and open our hearts and have a lot of kindness and sympathetic joy for others, enlightenment is there. We can take the open heart as our path to enlightenment. So that's what I wanted to share today. I hope this talk's been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast. Music was provided by Barefoot Brand Music. Please consider supporting the Rime Buddhist Center by making a donation at our website at www.rimecenter.org/donate.